This is Under the Cover, where we take you behind the scenes of some of the most iconic photo shoots, music videos, and fashion shows of our time. I'm Kylie Cavaco Reck, and alongside my father, legendary stylist Paul Cavaco, we'll dive into the glamorous styles and the ingenious collaborations that shaped modern fashion. We'll talk to supermodels, designers, hairdressers, makeup artists, and even a few other stylists to hear their personal stories. Because there's always a story under the cover.
It has been said that Anna Sui fused rock and roll, fashion, and fantasy into a fragrance empire. This is Anna Sui.
Hi, Anna.
Hi. Wait, let me just move my laundry here.
I mean, that needs
Wait,
to
what's
stay
on the
in.
left of you? What's on that side? There you
Mail.
go. There, that's good.
Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
How did you meet?
Do you remember, Anna?
Yes.
Okay.
I was putting black lace curtains up in my bedroom, and it was like a curved window. So I had to like tack it every like couple inches against the top of the window frame. And then the phone starts ringing, and it was Bob Fink. And he said, "We can see you."
Bob Fink, the
And I
hairdresser.
thought, what? And like he said, "Yes, we're at Barney's." And so then I think I looked out the window and I could see you also, and you were working on the Armani show that was going to be in the
Right. It
parking
was the
lot
first
of
Armani
Barney's.
show in America. Yeah.
Then we were like chit-chatting, and you were making fun of me being in the window. And I said, "Well, when you guys are finished, why don't you come over?" And so you all came over and just hung out in my apartment for a little bit. And that's how we got to meet.
Kylie was a baby, so we held Kylie up to the window so that Anna could see her. Because when we worked, we used to, and I know it sounds like Michael Jackson in Blanket when he put him off the side of the balcony, but it was just held up to a closed window, so it was not.
And I'm like one at that point.
Not even one.
Not even one. So this
'Cause you're
is
not
like
walking yet.
1977. So at that point, you are 25. Anna is 20 Sui, which she will remain
Exactly.
the entire podcast. And we're painting this picture. We're talking about Barney's when it was on 7th Avenue. And at this point, the offices are where you are on
Barney's.
17th Street and 7th
Yeah.
Avenue.
I lived on 16, and Barney's was on the corner of 16 and 7th, between 16th and 17th Street.
You make friends with my parents, Keisha
Yeah.
Keeble and Paul Cavaco. My understanding is that then my mother is asked to produce a television segment
You remember
about
this?
downtown fashion.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember this?
Remind me more.
Apparently there was a television segment that my mom wanted to produce with the idea of showcasing downtown fashion. Is that correct, Daddy?
So far.
Okay, and then what happens?
So then she called you because she wanted you to be in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, well, yes, and we can, we should go to like Patricia Field. And
right.
because you were because your clothes were at Patricia Field, which was on 8th Street, which is downtown. And it was the place where they showed, where everyone that was cool sold clothes.
It was the first place that where I met Jean-Michel Basquiat, and he was still Samo, and he was making the sweatshirts with his like kind of blurry image on the front of it.
Hand painting it himself.
Yeah.
And so you had 2 of those. We bought 2 of those for you. He made special ones for children.
Me, not for Anna.
For you. And so Anna so your mother decided that she wanted to have the sound of a camera clicking and a photographer taking pictures of the model wearing Anna's clothes, and the camera would click, and then the girl would be changed in another outfit. And Anna said, well, you should call my friend Stephen Meisel. And that's how we met Stephen Meisel.
So at this point, we've fast forwarded a little bit here. We now are meeting Stephen. My question is, how did you meet Stephen?
I went to Parsons School of Design, and one of the first days of school, I went into this drawing class, and I saw the most beautiful man I had ever seen in my life. And he was there drawing with his long black hair, and he had on this like antique reindeer sweater in dark green and jeans and his boots. And I just thought, oh my God, he's so gorgeous. And a few days later, I saw him in the lunchroom, and I would see him like hanging out in the lunchroom. And the fashion design students were not allowed to go to the lunchroom. We were discouraged from mingling with the other students. But of course, where did I go as soon as I could? The lunchroom. And one day he went, and so I went over and sat with him, and he's like, do you ever go out dancing? And I said, no, but I'd love to. And so he said, well, we're going out tonight, come with us. So I went and met him at this club. I think it was Tamberlane. And I came with my boyfriend. And for a while, he was just watching me with the boyfriend. And then he again called me over. He's like, get rid of the boyfriend. So of course I got rid of the boyfriend. And then we just started hanging out.
I love get rid of the boyfriend, and you do it.
That was the whole thing. That was the beginning of Steven being in charge, and whatever Steven says, you did. That's why I called him the puppet master.
Yeah.
Right. We're at Parsons at this stage, pre-meeting my parents, and my understanding or my memory is that you leave Parsons to go work at Charlie's Girls, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I feel like that happens because you overhear people talking about it at school.
There were two seniors talking about Erica Elias and Charlie's Girls, and I loved her. I had seen her in Rags magazine. There was a big article about her, and I thought, oh my God, I have to go meet her. So I just put together my student portfolio and ran up there, and I got the job. And luckily, because I didn't do my portfolio to graduate second year, so I thought, okay, if I get hired for a job, then I don't have to do this portfolio. So I got hired and didn't go back to Parsons.
So you went for Parsons. How many years is Parsons normally? 3,
it's
4?
It's a three-year course, but I only went for 2.
You sort of thought that would be a shortcut. But meanwhile, you're the last person that ever takes a shortcut to do anything. So it's kind of humorous. That was probably the last shortcut you ever took. One of the things that we should probably say at some point in this podcast, if not at this very moment, is that you might be the most educated person I have ever met on art, music, culture of all kinds, design, interior design, architecture. I mean, truly, you're absolutely the best guest anywhere. You can have a conversation about anything with anyone. And that's obviously an influence of everything that you do.
I'm obsessed with learning. And I guess that's to compensate for me not graduating from college. I feel like I didn't really get a proper education. So I'm just always trying to learn new things, and especially things I'm obsessed about.
What are you obsessed about?
Everything.
Everything. I mean, I could see a chair and suddenly there's a whole new world there. So it's just things that I kind of fall in love with, and I want to know more about it, and I'll just research it till I find something else to research. It's just my nature.
Interest leads to another interest.
Exactly.
That then becomes an obsession.
Yes.
We will get to this, but the dolly heads feel like they're an obsession.
Mm-hmm.
So when we go back, you shoot this television segment, right? It ends up being shot, correct?
Yeah.
You introduce Keisha and Paul to Steven. And then the sort of shortly thereafter, Polaroid wants to do a fashion show because they're introducing the
8x10 camera, which is a giant, it's 8 inches by 10 inches is what the size of the film is. So it's
the actual film is that size.
The actual negative is that size. So the
print is like poster size, I think maybe 23 by 36 or something. It's a much bigger print than what you would normally see.
Because the resolution of it is so great that you can just keep blowing the picture up and up, and it holds.
That's so cool.
Because it was 35 millimeter, is very pixelated, and it falls apart. The bigger the image gets, the more.
Who partakes in this fashion show other than Anna?
Vivian Tam. And Steven Sprouse.
Right. And you knew Steven Sprouse from Steven Meisel.
Right.
And at that point, Stephen Sprouse is designing clothes for Debbie Harry.
Right. He doesn't have a
Yes.
line of, he does not have his own line of clothes.
There's no line of clothes yet. But Vivian Tam has her own line and Anna
Yes.
has her own
Yes.
line.
Yes.
How early on in your career is this, Anna? Like from the time that Charlie's Girls happens till this, how many years do you think that is?
4 years, maybe. Because I had some friends that it was like the whole punk rock period, and they were making jewelry and selling it to all the rock and roll stores across country. This is back in the days when there were boutiques in every major city. And I thought that was so cool. And they said, well, why don't you make some clothes and we could share a booth at the boutique show. So I made like this little 5-piece collection, and suddenly I started getting orders, not just from little boutiques, but also from Macy's and Bloomingdale's, which were the more fashion forward stores at that moment. And I was still working for a big company, and I got called into the office, and the owner of the company, who I'd never met before, said, "Can you explain why you have your own New York Times ad?" And I'm like, "It just happened. I don't know. They just gave me an ad." He said, "Yeah, but you're on my payroll." And I said, "Well, yeah, but they just gave me this ad. How could I say no?" And he said, "Well, it's got to stop." And I said, "It can't stop. I have to ship my orders." So he fired me. So that's how I started my own business.
Oh, where were you fired from?
Glenora. Yes, Glenora.
Was Glenora a junior fashion house?
Yeah, junior fashion house.
Because at that time they had junior fashion houses.
Yeah, this is before contemporary, which is what eventually my clothing kind of pioneered that contemporary look, which was somewhere between junior and designer. But at this point, it was like every department store had a junior department where they had young fashion, and then they had a designer department, which was for ladies and career women. And I never really wanted to do clothes for ladies and career women, so I always kind of have stayed in that in between very young fashion and designer fashion.
I mean, you wanted to do, it sounds like, clothing for rock stars.
Yeah.
And that's what you did.
That was my main ambition. Yeah.
So it's now early 1980s. We go sort of forward a full decade. You're still 20 Sui.
Yes.
And
I'm much older at this point.
at this point, you're now almost 40. Are you
Maybe.
in 1991?
Yeah.
So Anna, my understanding is you end up going to Paris with Stephen Meisel.
Yes.
There's a moment that happens there. Will you share that moment with us?
Yeah. So the first show we were going to was Gaultier, but we stopped at the Ritz on the way to pick up Madonna. And we went up to her room, and in her room, she had shopping bags and racks of clothes from every major designer in France. And I was like so jealous because they were all these like Lacroix things and Chanel things. And I just thought, oh my God, she could have anything. And she came running out of her bedroom with her coat on, and we ran into the car, drove straight to the show, got escorted into the show. They'd been holding the show for her. And when she sat down, she took off her coat and she said, "Anna, I have a surprise for you." And she was wearing my dress. So that was like, I couldn't believe, like after seeing like every single designer giving her their clothes, that she was wearing my dress.
It's funny because actually that's very much how you are as well as a person. She's very giving and warm around supporting her friends, and you do the exact same thing. So it's not surprising that would be your karma, that she would, take off her coat at Gaultier, which I'm sure resulted in a lot of photographs. I mean,
Yes.
I've seen photographs from the event. So you then go back to New York with Stephen. You're friends with my dad at this point, who has a PR company at this stage. It feels like this is a moment in your career that now most people that know the history of Anna Sui know about.
We were sitting around in my apartment, and I had just moved my business finally out of my apartment and gotten an office space. So we were sitting around. I think that this was the same time when we were talking about the floors.
Right.
And and I was on the phone with the contractor, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just want you to sand the floors and just, and then, put some polyurethane down so that they're just kind of like blonde. And Steven's like, get off the phone. I'm like, what? He said, get off the phone. So I said, okay, I got to call you back. And he's like, okay, what color floor would Vreeland have? And I said, red. And he said, okay, so you need red floors. So I had to research how to get red floors, which there was a new stain for floors from Sweden. And it was in colors, and they had this very, very nice red. So that became what my floor was. But I think, Paul, you were there, and we were sitting around talking, and also brought up was the fact that, okay, it's your turn to have a fashion show. And I was like, what? How can I do that? I don't have any money. How can I afford it? He's, don't worry. We'll help you. We'll help you. So they did indeed really help me, and everybody pitched in. And like, I knew Naomi and Linda and Christy socially because they were friends with Stephen, and they would come over and hang out in my apartment. So they all helped me get all the other models. And Paul helped me organize the whole show with his
right. So
company.
we called all the people that we had who did production because we would do at least 5 shows a season in New York, just in New York. So I called the person and I said, how much would it be? And it's a friend of mine. They said, we'll give it to you for free. So the people came and just did it so it happened. We found it was an empty space in the building, right?
Yeah. Where my showroom was, there was an empty floor, like a big, huge room. And we did the show in that room.
Right. And then they just came, and her runway was pink, like shocking pink runway.
Yeah. Pink patent leather.
Oh, it was pink patent leather?
Yeah.
Okay. And, the chairs had, they were like little ballroom chairs with pink cushions on them, shocking pink cushions.
Wait, how did you get shocking pink cushions? Did you make them, Anna?
We had to order the fabric.
You ordered them.
Because we were working in this vinyl fabric for the collection. And I guess I came across the hot pink. And so that became the backdrop and the runway and the cushions, or we might have made the cushions. I don't remember really.
Yeah, I don't remember how we did it.
I remember this show very well. It was in a room that was much smaller than a normal fashion show venue, although a big room, but smaller than a fashion show venue. And on one end where the camera pit was the window. And the runway went, in the space, the length of the room with the backdrop. And then behind that, where the other windows were, was where hair and makeup was. Who did hair and makeup? Garen did the hair, and Francois Nars did the makeup. He himself did the makeup.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is before he had his makeup line, when he was just doing makeup. But this also prompted him, this is the time period that he also switches over and creates a makeup line.
At this point, because we're now at 1991, Madonna is very, very famous. So you've had this moment in Paris, and then the models that are in your show are also very, very famous themselves.
Yes.
The show opens. I remember, I've been to a lot of fashion shows in my lifetime. I remember feeling like I was at a rock show. And I feel, does it open to...
The Cure, Love Cats.
It's got Love Cats playing, which feels like a concert. It doesn't feel like a traditional fashion show, which at that point, they had started to have more popular music or cool music playing during a show. But this was more downtown. It was more Anna. And you were in the world of Anna Sui the minute that started. And then out comes all of the supermodels.
I think the show opens with Linda, right?
Linda, yes.
Yeah, it opens with Linda Evangelista. Everything is matching. There's a matching hat. There's a matching purse. There's a matching little spat that goes over the shoe. Everything is like plaid. And everything, the entire show looks this way, but keeps shifting into a new thing. And the girls are so excited to be in this type of show because it's the show that actually matches their age, as opposed to them trying to look like ladies. This is who they really are. So they are incredible in the show because they feel the vibe, because it is their vibe. And for the first time, I think you see them as young girls instead of women, which they were. They were all very young.
This was my introduction to runway clothing. I was also quite young, but the idea that I was able to wear clothes from the runway was really cool. And I think other people felt that way too. And we have that very iconic matching yellow plaid outfit that Naomi wears in the show that people think is the suit that she's wearing in Clueless, that Alicia Silverstone is wearing in Clueless. But in fact, this is actually way before that. It's a few years before that. And the suit she wears is actually Dolce & Gabbana in the movie.
Yeah.
And
Copied.
what I was so,
but she did wear several of my outfits during that movie also.
She did. Yes. So she wore many, many, many outfits that are Anna Sui, in fact, in that movie. What is interesting about that is that not only is it your clothes, but there's also the clothes that you were inspiring. And that seems to be a theme throughout your career, is that what happens and goes down the runway at Anna Sui then starts to show up later in very, in a non-contemporary way, but really in high fashion and even on the couture runways. And what I think people are fascinated by, there are people that truly are Anna Sui historians. And they all sort of pull through this same thread of this curiosity that begins with the idea that you have that you then seem to really explore and turn it into an obsession. When you go into a process of a collection and think about creating a collection, they're quite close together, especially now. At the time, you're doing 2 shows, right? You're doing just fall, winter, and spring, summer.
Right.
So this show happens, and then what happens in the world of retail at that point for you, press, what happens after this show happens? Because you probably didn't know it was going to happen.
This is right at the point when globalization was starting, that New York Fashion Week got like much more together. We were showing at Bryant Park and we had all the international press. And suddenly we had buyers from all over the world, especially Japan. And so I got pursued by every major company from Japan to for distribution, for manufacturing, for just selling the collection. So it was just a really, really exciting time. And I think New York fashion was really exploding at that point too. Like everyone wanted that New York look.
And at that point, Fashion Week doesn't begin with New York. New York is ending Fashion Week, correct?
Yeah. And then a couple years down, the whole thing flipped because I think Calvin and Helmut Lang wanted to start earlier to show everybody in the world that New York were the leaders.
The interesting thing that does happen, though, is that because you go first, it's clear that you are not informed by Europe.
Well, that was the purpose of it. Because they always said that New York copied all the Europeans, and they wanted to show that, in fact, New York had its own creativity, that it didn't need the Europeans. And in fact, then you did start to see, like we were just saying about, the yellow suit, that the Europeans are then taking hints from Americans and copying.
I like that, taking hints.
Well, you see, Anna had at one point done, they were metallic leather, like motorcycle jackets, and they turned up in someone's collection a year or 2 later. some very high-end fashion. And, so you start to see the trickle down of American fashion into European fashion when, in fact, they had thought it was the reverse, that the Americans were copying the...
I've done the research because I, like Anna, like to do my research, and I, find something and I get obsessed. I can probably point to at least 7 or 8 very significant things that happened on a very high-end level in fashion that began as Anna's idea. And Anna has so many ideas on the runway, it sort of slipped in. And then it becomes something that you then see, maybe at Chanel, which happened more than once. And I think that is something that I think is kind of remarkable, that, we're looking at first of all, even though you're only 20 Sui, we have a very long career and lots of different collections. And the collections are so different. I'm looking at your book right now next to me. From, spring to summer, fall to winter, it's a completely different look. How do we arrive there? What's that, because it still looks like Anna Sui, but there's definitely I'm looking at like these incredible, which I've seen somewhere else, these sequin camouflage pants in autumn of 1995. But then, then spring comes along of the same year. And then I have, sort of like a Fillmore poster, shift dress that's also sequin. So it's still sequins. It's still this idea of like a print and a sequin. But now we're into sort of like a surfer moment that's happening.
This was my favorite collection. Hip hop Tibetan surfer. That was, I think, the thing that's interesting when you speak down. It's never one thing. It's several different ideas pushed together into one. And so when Anna would describe to us, she would say, I'm going to do Tibetan hip hop surfer. And I was thinking, what could that possibly be? And Naomi came out. Naomi opens the show, and she is a Tibetan hip hop surfer, which made no sense. And suddenly you see it and you go, oh yes, of course, that's a great look. And I loved this collection so much. But there were so many collections I loved.
This is the collection that has that Madras bra top and short that's on Kate Moss in that photo, the surfer photo. So that show happens obviously before. So then Anna's saying, okay, I'm into hip hop Tibetan surfer. And then what ends up happening is then it also then is informing Editorial, because obviously the collections always inform Editorial, but Anna has a unique relationship too, which is fascinating to all of the editors and photographers. So I feel like a lot of this is sort of this incredible melding of friendships that sort of influence the way that the story gets told. But honestly, it seems like it starts with you, Anna.
It usually does. I mean, for me, having done a lot of editorial, the Tibetan hip hop surfer was a full editorial in Bazaar. You took me to see Théâtre des Modes at the Met. That became an entire story with Linda Evangelista. And it was, we went to the museum, and there were little dioramas of fashion it was all couture from Paris from the 40s, and it was on tiny little mannequins. And some of them were based on
Paris
movies.
was trying to revive the fashion industry, because this is right after World War II. but they didn't have a lot of money. So they thought, well, if they made these little dresses, not only could they save money on the fabric, but they could also ship them around the world to show women what the possibilities would be from different designers. So they put together this whole collection with several designers, and they did send these dolls with these clothes around the world. And that's how they regenerated the fashion business in France.
They were shown, the little dolls were shown in dioramas that were done by artists.
Yes,
and one of them was done by Cavaco, and it was based on the movie I Married a Witch. So we see that in the museum. It's summertime. We go to the country, and it gets the tape. This whatever. It's not even a CD. It is a.
You mean a VHS, not a CD, not a DVD.
Yeah, it's a VHS. And we're watching it, and you're a child. We're all watching it in the living room on TV, and then I get a job at Harper's Bazaar, and one of the stories I end up doing is based on this movie that Anna has shown me, based on this other thing at the museum. So Anna has very, very often introduced not only me, but I'm sure Stephen, I'm sure very, very many people, to ideas that then turn into editorials and other things.
We did do a lot of movie watching with Anna. I feel like we watched them in the country together at our house. We watched them at her apartment. We watched other things as well. Anna, who's Dippy Holland?
When I would come out and visit you in the country, I don't know, you and I clicked from day one. And we would sit in the back seat, and you would just start this narration, and you would just go on and on and on and on and on, like narrating whatever was going through your mind. And to the point where, like I said, Paul, we have Dippy Holland here. So I always called you Dippy Holland because you would just start narrating. And it was just so adorable and so cute. And just about all different topics, to the point where sometimes some of your vocabulary was not a child's vocabulary. So you were like a tape recorder for other people's ideas. Because I remember you talking about the underbelly of society one time. And I just thought, what? Like, where did she hear that? So it was really kind of remarkable.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time together. Yeah. We learned how to water ski together.
and snow ski together.
And snow ski.
Right,
Actually, that's the interesting thing. The reason, why did we learn to ski?
Well, because if we were going to become secret agents, which was like our life ambition, we'd have to learn how to ski because James Bond could ski.
This is true. And then...
That's something you two shared. You always wanted to be spies.
We wanted to be spies, and we both... Anna tried to get me to learn to scuba dive, which I didn't, but she did.
I remember this well. Everything... There were certain themes in my childhood, and spy was definitely a theme. And then as an adult... my father and I took my children to the Spy Museum, and the entire time, all he said was, I mean, we have to bring Anna Sui here. And I think that anyone listening would have been like, it's not very fashionable here. It's not very chic. But they didn't know that you were actually Secret Agent Sui.
At this point in our careers, I was doing magazine work. Stephen Meisel was shooting it. And Anna was also styling magazines with Stephen. So we were working for an Italian magazine called Per Louis and another one called Lei.
Per Louis meaning for him.
For him, and Lei is her.
Which is like L?
L-E-I. No, it was really like Glamour magazine. It was really Glamour magazine but younger actually. And the editor-in-chief loved Anna, thought she was really talented, and got her a job designing for postcards. Wasn't that the name of the company?
Oh, ski company.
No, it was Iceberg.
Iceberg.
So also a ski company.
So Anna then designs it because she learned how to, because she's designing these, ski wear, we're now that have to go learn how to ski. So I know how to ski. You're 5 years old. You don't know how to ski yet. And Anna doesn't know how to ski. And we all go every weekend. We go in
to
a car.
Windham Mountain.
We go to Windham Mountain. Basically, we skied on ice. It wasn't really snow.
It wasn't really snow.
Like,
And I thought, wow, it's so hard. This is so hard. But then you were terrified to fall because you probably break your leg. So we tried to get as good as we could.
and we learned.
It was treacherous. Yeah.
It was treacherous, but we did learn. And Kylie became a very good skier, actually, because she was 5.
Okay,
You and I
easy. I became an okay skier.
but we did not become good skiers.
No.
But we went every week and we did ski. So it was, again, another introduction to Anna to do something based on something that she was doing. Then we all, as her friends, became involved in it with her. So I think that is part of the theme. If Anna becomes involved in it, if you're a friend, you too are part of that world.
World of Sui.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Dolly friends. Dolly friends.
So speaking of World of Sui, the thing that you and I share is that I was one of your first employees in your store when I was 15, where you had the floors of the store were, in fact, the Vreeland red that you had figured out for your studio, and the furniture you found at the flea market.
And we painted it all black lacquer.
Right. And we
So
used
it
to
all
go
looked like it matched.
for almost, I think, 20 years or so. We went every week, every Sunday to the flea market.
20 years beginning.
It was
like
church.
when?
It was like church for us.
It was church.
It was church. I don't even know when it started, but we would go. And one of the people we went with is Tim Schaefer, who's an artist and really close friend of ours. And Tim called himself and me the mules, because Anna would be buying all the stuff and we would just keep taking shopping bags from her, and we would just carry, because it was all inspiring. And then we get to her house, undo it all, and like, isn't this fabulous? Isn't this great? Isn't it? So we learned actually how to find inspiration from small things. Like she would have like a tiny handkerchief, but it could become wallpaper. It could become a handkerchief. It could become a dress.
Did you find the original dolly head at the flea market?
I did. And the back of the head was cracked open. So that's how I figured out how to make them, because it was actually just a styrofoam like wig head. And then it had
I
paper
remember
mache.
well.
Yeah.
I
paper
remember
mache.
well. And why do I
painted
remember?
one too. You painted one also for the store.
Before the store opened.
Yeah, we were waiting to hear about if I was going to get the lease, and we decided to make decorations for the store, and I didn't have a lot of money, so everyone pitched in, and we made dolly heads to decorate the store.
So
And
we did it. The first round was at your kitchen table, right? In your house on 16th Street. And it was styrofoam paper, these styrofoam wig heads. And then with paper mache, we built their faces. We made noses, we made mouths, and then we painted them. And then the next round, we went to the Hamptons where we had a house, and then we did a whole bunch there. So
and then that was the decor that, lined the walls, along with Fillmore posters, some photographs.
Yeah.
And the first store, from what I remember anyway, was on Green Street in Soho. It was like the cool hangout, because it was a store that at the time, stores weren't decorated sort of like someone's living room, but it sort of felt like someone's living room.
well, you had sofas and chairs
Yeah.
that were covered in, what color were they covered in? Purple, no?
Black first.
Purple and black velvet. But I think the first couch was black velvet. And then we covered the chairs in purple. And I made it look like a boudoir, but then like there had to be like a seating area so that the boyfriends wouldn't get antsy while the girls were trying on all the clothes. So
Or the movie star and rock star boyfriends. So the shop was consistently filled with the coolest people in New York City at that time.
Yeah.
Just
And
who would come and hang out.
And Lenny Kravitz lived upstairs, and he was with Vanessa Paradis then.
That's right. We would have Lenny sightings on our Sundays at work. So when the store happens and you've got your store, you've got, your World of Sui happening, do you think in your mind, I'm going to have stores all over the world at that point? Or do you just think like, I'm just building a template because it's what I like doing? And do you know that that's what's coming down the pipeline? Is it the template for it, or is it just like, oh, this is what I'm doing?
Ever since I was a kid, I saved pictures, and I had a whole file called boutiques, and it had pictures of all my favorite boutiques, and Biba being the main one that I loved. And when it came time to like decorating the store, I took out the file and I, got my ideas together. And I never thought that there'd be more than one. But then I started going out to LA because I got to be friends with Sofia Coppola and all her friends, and because they were all coming to my show, and they kept saying, "Oh, you've got to open a store in LA." So eventually we opened a store in LA. So I spent a lot of time there, going there every couple of weeks, and we made an identical store out in LA. And
store number 2 was LA.
Store number 2, and
this
then
is something
again,
you and I have in common.
This, again, is at the time of globalization and all the Japanese buyers are coming. So part of my deal with signing with Isetan in Japan was that there were going to be boutiques and cosmetics counters. So we used my store as the model for all these other stores. And in fact, sometimes I would go to the flea market and buy more furniture, and we would ship it to Japan or eventually China also, and have them painted all black lacquer and have it as close to what the original store looked like as possible.
What's so interesting about that is I think that branding exercise for current brands is actually challenging for people to create their brand voice, for them to establish who they are and the recognizable elements of their brand. And that came so naturally to you. It was part of just, the world of Sui. And it seems like what ends up happening through that is it becomes a very easily identifiable and replicatable model. But you didn't set out for that.
Yeah, but I think that that's what made my brand a success, because it was so recognizable. And when they made like a little counter for the airport store, or they made a whole shop from, pretty far away, you could see that it was an Anna Sui store. And I think that gave like a whole generation of people an idea of like this other identity that besides like corporate America, that there could be some kind of uniqueness and something with an antique or vintage quality, which is what I always loved.
It's remarkable to look at all the things that you've created, but probably the wildest thing that you've created is your fragrance collection. I mean, it is bananas how successful it is. It is wild to me to imagine that you can truly go into a place and it smells like Anna Sui fragrance. It is widely worn. It is, and all the different fragrances. I mean, it's not just one, but there is a through line between all of them, not necessarily in scent, but in concept. Will you tell us what that is?
Mm-hmm. The first 8 to 10, it was all aspirational. So the first fragrance was Anna Sui, and then it became Sui Love, Sui Dream. And it just, I think it struck a chord with like a whole generation of young women that were just discovering fragrance and wanting to wear fragrance that wasn't so overpowering that, you could only wear it in the evening. It's something that you could wear during the day. And also, I think that people used it like as an identifier for their personalities too. So our fragrances varied, but there's still kind of a common chord throughout them, that they're kind of fruity and floral, but nothing is ever really heavy or overpowering. And in fact, we still manufacture that first fragrance, the Anna Sui fragrance, is just as strong as it started. And we have about six or seven that have carried through since their inception and are still selling.
Do you have a favorite?
The one that I wore the most was Secret Wish. And that's the kind of like turquoisey color one with the fairy on the top. I just love the notes on that one. So
What
that
are
one
the
sometimes there's definitely a tea rose behind it, and then there's some like bergamot and a little bit of citrus for that freshness. And again, it's not very heavy, which is what I like. I just think that it shouldn't be overpowering when you wear fragrance, but you should have like a personality to it.
Did you know when you were little, did you have a knowing that this is what you were going to do?
Yeah. Ever since I was about 5 years old, I came to New York and I was a flower girl at my uncle's wedding. And when I went back to Michigan, I said to my parents, when I grow up, I'm going to be a fashion designer and move to New York. It took me a while to figure out what that was all about. So pretty much my whole childhood and teenage years. But of course, I had to start buying Vogue magazine when I'd be shopping with my mom and just trying to educate myself. And then discovering that Parsons School of Design had an ad in the back of 17 magazine, when my babysitter would bring 17 magazine with her when she came to take care of us. And every household in the United States had Life magazine subscriptions. And there was a big story about two young ladies that went to Parsons School of Design. And when they graduated, they moved to Paris, and Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton opened a boutique for them. So I thought, I've got to go to Parsons. I remember seeing the ad in the back of 17. So I wrote to Parsons and asked for the registration catalog. And I started gearing my whole education so that I would have everything I needed to get into Parsons.
How old are you at that point?
I think this started because if I still had a babysitter. So
you were young.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that theme of your life of being inspired by something, researching it, making it happen, seems like it began really, really young and has been the fuel behind the world of Sui, which is also just fascinating. Like to imagine that you've created a world, that you've, I mean, yes, you've definitely won awards. You've won the Perry Ellis Award when you were, just starting your fashion show kind of career and having a bigger collection. You've also won the Lifetime Achievement Award, but you're only 20 Sui. But, and in 2020, you won the Medal of Honor for Achievement in Fashion by the National Arts Club. And you're still probably the most humble fashion designer and curious fashion designer. And you have this true love of your family, of your friends, of creativity, of curiosity. Was that always how you were from childhood?
I guess so. And, it's really funny because I came across Jeannie Becker that was covering one of my shows, and she interviewed my father. And she's asking him, like, was she always like this? And he says, yeah, she was always interested in things and learning about things. And maybe now is her time. And I just thought that was like so amazing that he said that. Because of course, when I first said I wanted to be a fashion designer, my parents were like, you can't be a dressmaker. You have to go to college and you have to be a doctor or a lawyer and no, I want to be a fashion designer. But in their minds, it was dressmaker. But I think when they came to the first show, they kind of saw what it was about. And it got to the point where my dad knew every journalist and by name, and also like Cal and like all the bigwigs. And he
the retail bigwigs,
and just, loved coming to the shows and rubbing elbows with everybody. So it was really nice that they were able to experience that.
When we think about also fashion shows and the front rows of fashion shows, you were also a pioneer in the way that people attended shows, right? Because you had friends from all walks of life, you had your family. And so the front row was always a collection of your greatest fans. It wasn't only industry.
Right.
So it was also a time during Fashion Week where people were excited to see each other, excited to see who might be in the front row. And you always had, obviously your mainstays of your dearest friends, but there were definitely moments where people, if they were having a moment, they would be in the front row at Anna Sui. Probably also so that they would be discovered.
Well, it had a cool factor.
A very cool factor.
Like going to Anna show because it was at night initially, so it was
6 p.m.
It was one of the later shows, and so you could actually get dressed for it and be wearing something that's evening-y and get away with it and not look ridiculous. It was an afternoon show, and wearing sequins maybe not the best look.
Ideally, you're wearing Sui.
And so you're wearing Sui. Well, they all were wearing Sui.
Yeah.
And I think that, so you saw all the different incarnations of Sui in the front row, and people from all different, not even walks of life, but different time periods that were famous from the 60s, from the 70s, from the 80s. There were just all these different people that you had seen and read about when you were their age. So it was a really interesting mix. And it was all the editors, because every editor came to the show. Because there was a lot of inspiration, and there always has been in an Anna Sui show.
I mean, in my life, which this is not a podcast about me, but in my life, everything that I have done, this could make me cry. Have a little tear. But everything that I've ever done, the first person to always say yes to support would be Anna.
She took you to get your ears pierced, much to my upset.
Yeah, but I think she did. She definitely took me to get my ears pierced on 8th Street when I was 13. But the truth is the reason she took me to get my ears pierced is because my mom was dying. And I think that there's a warmth to Anna that is sort of unspoken but felt by everybody. And there's a support that, we talk about, like you say, you remained curious because you didn't graduate college. And that you are so warm, but it's not a reaction to something or a response to something. That's how you were raised. When, you were raised to be in family, you were raised to support each other. And then by extension, then everyone came to support you.
Yeah.
And you are just such a grateful human. And that seems to be the real thread between, everything that you've done. It's like you're just so happy to be here. You're so, as my dad would say, you're alive with pleasure. Where does that come from?
The fact that I was able to always do what I loved, and with the support of all my friends, and, able to work with them, able to really develop this other family too. It has been so important. And you see that throughout the whole time that I've been doing this. It's almost the same team from the very beginning. And maybe it's that sense of security, that sense of trust. But I just really believe in that we really need to be loyal and supportive and be there for each other. And I think that I've been so blessed with that.
And we're blessed with you.
Indeed. Thank you so much for being on this with us.
Thank you. It's great to see you, Kylie.
It's so
Dippy.
nice to see you. Dippy. Dippy.
Dippy.
Dippy. And this part of the show will not be seen because the two of us look wreck.
Actually, you named yourself.
You did.
You named yourself. I didn't name you. You named yourself. Because I'm like, who is this? And like, Dippy Holland. And then it became your answer. You named yourself.
Dippy Holland. Who knew?
Who knew?
Who knew it would be the beginning of a beautiful thing? Under the Cover is a production of Knockout Beauty Media Group and Audley. I'm writer and host Kylie Cavaco Rec. Guest booking is by Paul Cavaco and Lindsay Hannon. Audio and video production is by David Wojcik. Our executive producers are Kylie Cavaco Rec and Paul Cavaco at Knockout Beauty Media Group, and Matthew Wells, Lindsay Hannon, and David Wojcik at Audley. Special thanks to Meredith Honig, Jessica Alpert, and John Parati at Rococo Punch, and Rachna Shah, Jamie Karp, and Jenna Provencher at KCD. For photos and more details on the series, follow Under the Cover Podcast on Instagram and Substack at Under the Cover. If you like the series, please leave us a review, and as always, don't forget to tell a friend. I'm Kylie Cavaco Rec. Thank you for listening.